nothing like springtime in Haldimand Norfolk and sitting down to have coffee with MPP Bobbi Ann Brady for Haldimand Norfolk. How are you?
Pretty good, Dave. How are you?
Pretty good. Just give people sort of a focus point here. We're doing this just a day after the U.S. announcement about reviewing tariffs or stopping them for 90 days, but it's still affecting the auto industry here, 25%. And I want to get your thoughts on tariffs. I know we don't want to dwell on this, but as a small business owner and looking at what the federal government and the provincial government has said, hey, we're going to defer your tax stuff till October. Like, not in all cases, obviously, but it didn't make sense to me. I don't think it's helping.
Yeah,
There's a lot of
kicking the
concern
can
out
down
there.
the road, delaying, just keeping people on edge, right? And I think that I think what we need to do. I've been to a lot of farm meetings. Farm meeting season has stretched. It's usually January and February, but I think I went to my last farm meeting last week, which is great. People are coming together. They're talking about these things. Nobody's panicking. But the one thing that we do talk about is the fact that we see government officials coming together and talking about manufacturing, things like that, but nobody's talking about agriculture. So specific to Haldimand Norfolk, I'm very, very worried that nobody's working on a plan for agriculture, and each commodity might be, but we need to come together as an entire industry and make sure, even if these tariffs, even if we don't need the plan right now, at some point we need to pull that plan down and figure out how we're going to move forward and still be productive. The other sentiment is that we can't control what happens on the other side of the border, but we certainly can control what's happening within our borders. And I look at a conservative government at Queen's Park, and I'm really hoping that they've got some ideas with respect to tax cuts and red tape reduction. We have an entire ministry of red tape reduction at Queen's Park, whom I would say is really not working on a whole heck of a lot. And I think now is the time to put that ministry to work and figure out how we get out of people's way and help them go out there and do what they do and make money and be self-sufficient.
I think too. I mean, the reason I want to bring it up to you, I talked to a couple. I did a couple podcasts recently with small businesses in Norfolk County, and both of them were going to feel, or long term, are going to feel the effect of tariffs. And it might not be now, but it could be in October with the one that was, that's when their production, when they get stuff in from the U.S. It could have a detrimental effect. And the other one was really unique because things like HVAC, this other podcast we
Mm-hmm.
did. So let's say your furnace is made in the USA and you no longer can get the part because the part suddenly is, X amount of dollars more. But you can't use a part from a different country because it causes the warranty not to be valid.
Right.
Like it's so that's so fine, right? That you're
Chain reaction type
right,
things.
right. It's the whole
Mm-hmm.
chain reaction thing. And I thought these are the little things we're not understanding how they're going to affect our
Mm-hmm.
businesses locally.
Yeah,
And the last thing that gentleman wants to do is raise prices again, right?
that's right.
People
Right.
can't afford
And,
what
and
they got
so
now.
that's where Doug Ford needs to say, okay, we're going to cut the small business tax rate. Boom, cut it, chop it right down. And in fact, we should have been doing that a long time ago. With the economic environment, even prior to the announcement of tariffs, or the thought of tariffs, is we should have been making an easier, environment for our small businesses. I brought forward a petition calling on the government to reduce the small business tax rate, and then my colleague Stephanie Bowman brought forward a private members bill that played upon my petition to cut the small business tax rate, and it was voted down. These are good things for our small businesses. It's good thing for the economy locally and across Ontario, and yet we didn't do it. So I'm really hoping that is going to be my focus when I get back to Queen's Park, which, by the way, we go back Monday, and that's going to be my focus. Is, look, you know what? As a provincial representative, there's very little that I can do to affect any change across the board. I mean, I have reached out to some folks that I met, especially in Iowa back at the beginning of January, Republicans from the Midwest. I've reached out and said, hey, like, you have any advice,
What's
like what's
going
going on?
on?
And really they're sitting and watching just like we are. But there are things that we can do within this province to make life a little bit easier for everyone, and we're not doing them. So that's going to be my focus. Is, look, you know what? Get out of people's way, cut the red tape, cut taxes, and let's soldier through this.
When you look, the overall effect, the Hamilton Spectator this was just Norfolk, their stats for Norfolk, the effect of the tariffs would have been 2.6 billion. That's just Norfolk, not Haldimand, and another 600 million on it, with agriculture.
Agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, that's a
Staggering.
lot for us to take
Mhm.
on, right? That's a lot
Absolutely.
of manufacturing money it's
And we
coming and
also have to
going.
remember that that's a lot coming off the past few years. I mean, we have not had banner years,
Yeah, good point.
as on a whole, coming out of a pandemic. I mean, I know that there was a business that spoke to me from Dover, friend of mine who owns a beautiful little business down in Dover, and she said to me, Bobbi Ann, this was last year. It'll take me 7 years to
Yeah.
recover from the pandemic. 7 years from the pandemic, and now if we're staring down the barrel of some of these things, then I don't know. They're not going to survive.
I think, and you and I were talking off air, and I do want to bring this up to folks because it gave me hope. I read a story on a company that works on import exports at the border, a Canadian company that tries to find solutions for these companies. And one of the ones that they were saying that a lot of US Canadian companies that work together were splitting the tariff
Yeah.
because they realized if one went broke, the other went broke. So they had to save each other. And to me, that was like, man, I'm happy to hear that, but why are we doing this again to businesses that are just
Mhm.
trying to survive? Like
That's
the
right.
everyday people, right? That's the other
Yeah.
part.
It's funny. It's funny you mentioned that because, as I was saying to you, I was sitting beside a gentleman from Haldimand County at the Christian Farmers Federation AGM a few weeks ago. It was in Elora. Very, very good night, by the way. Um, but that's exactly what he was doing with one of his business partners across the way. Is they were splitting. They had this deal that they were going to split it, and he was very happy with that. And it was because they both realized, hey, we need each other. And
Yeah.
if you're penalized and I can't have your product, my customers are going to complain because we can't have your superior product. So, kudos to both of them for working that out. And I think that those things can be done, but it's still an increase on both ends, right? It's still an added pressure to both those businesses.
One of the things that you talked to me a couple of years ago about was just that strip of land between, along the border that's all agricultural, and how we were, unfortunately, too many homes were being developed for it. And when
Mhm.
I seen all these tariffs and all that, and I thought more than ever, we need to protect that land now, right? Like that's the full circle. We got to be more
Mhm.
self-sufficient. So we need
Mhm.
our valuable agricultural land. We should be taking a stronger look at that right now too, I think, don't you?
Well, Dave, you can never you can never um, really stop me from talking about preservation of our most productive land. And I hope that there are some folks out there who have told me that I'm dramatic on this issue. I hope that they are now taking a little bit of a step back over the past while and saying, oh, wait a minute, maybe we should be protecting our most productive land so that we can feed all of the people who are here and be self-sufficient. One of the arguments I heard from at least one farmer during the election is, well, my land, I'm as productive as I can get. Well, that's fine, but at some point, somebody's going to be more productive, and you're going to want to keep pace, or there's going to be more people added, and you're going to need more land. So, sure, you might be able to operate right now on 45 acres, but what happens when we actually need you to have 55 acres, and you've paved over it or you've sold it or whatever, right? And so I hope that this will help some of those people who think that we can just give up some of our most productive land so easily. Hopefully this makes them think twice, because it's all about what we're leaving for future generations too.
Yeah, and the last thing to talk about on tariffs, and I just want to get your thoughts again. You sort of mentioned this, and I want to go back to it. I think, I personally, I think for any business, I mean, I get the relief. I appreciate that they're trying to do something federally and provincially, but there's got to be some line in the sand where it's a tax break long term. I think you brought this up to me
Mhm,
before.
mhm.
Talk to me about that. Where do you see this, or how do you think it would work?
Well, I'm not certain that I have all the answers on that, but I think you're right. I mean, regardless of what happens, I think that we have to create an environment where people can make money and they can maybe get ahead instead of just tread water. Let them get ahead, because we're going to face another, let's call it a crisis. There'll be another crisis down the road. Let them create that nest egg so that they can actually deal with the next crisis, instead of trying to deal with the crisis and figure out how you're going to pay the bills right there in that moment. Allow them to have that opportunity to create that kind of cushion, so that when the next crisis comes along, they're well prepared, or they can at least weather the storm a little bit better. So, I'm always a huge proponent for cutting taxes, cutting red tape. And I really think that in this situation, that is where we could actually help people out here in Ontario, help people out right across Canada, but leave those measures in place. Allow people to keep more of their hard-earned money, allow people to do better, because it actually helps the economy. When you and I, when businesses have money, they reinvest it, or they do things with it that actually create a better economic environment for the entire population. So this idea of doing something temporary, no, let's keep it in long term. Let's keep it in for a set number of years, but don't make it a 6 to 9 month program and make it difficult for people to actually qualify for it. Make it across the board. Allow people to keep the money and build for the next crisis.
The big thing that I've always felt is, being a small business person, was there's no incentive to stay in small business.
No.
There's zero incentive anymore. It's almost like, okay, but you're going to be poor, right? Like, I mean, you have to pay your dues to grow your business. I get that. I understand that. But there's actually nothing in place to incentivize you to grow your business, to be, you spend so much time doing paperwork. It's ridiculous.
Right. And the way they look at it is like, oh, you're following your dream. So like, just go be the starving business owner following
you're crushing your dream is more than
right. And yet our small businesses are the ones who keep our communities 90%. Like they're like, I was at the home builders last night, the home builders AGM, and even our small home builders are treated unfairly compared to the big guys, because the big guys have all the money to come in and battle our municipalities, to go to the OLT, all of these things. Mm-hmm. Our small guys don't have that. And yet, is it the big guys who are actually sponsoring baseball teams, sponsoring hockey teams, right, sponsoring festivals and community events in Haldimand Norfolk? No, that's the small business owner who is doing that. Those are local people who are investing back in our community. So why are we treating them worse than we're treating outsiders? I don't get it.
And I do, on that last note too, I do appreciate folks finally realizing to buy Canadian as much as they can. You know what I mean? There seems to be that swing now, and I'm kind of enjoying that, seeing that people really take pride in who they are as a country.
The one thing that I do worry about, and there'll be some people who might be upset that I say this, but we all have friends on the other side of the border. Yep. And we need to, we can't be angry with our friends. We can't treat people poorly because of Donald Trump. I when I see some of the the comments on social media, and I hear people talk about the Americans, it makes me sad, because we've always had a really good relationship, and we all have friends in the United States. And I think it's sad that it's come to this, really.
It's not the people.
No.
Like, I think a lot of Canadians realize that, because they do it. Like you said, you have friends and family there. Yeah. It's the situation they're in as well. Mm-hmm. And trying to find a way to work together is important. I got one more thing for you. This came across my desk and I don't really understand it. I'm going to ask you to talk about it. This strong mayors thing keeps coming back. What is this about? Can you explain it to me?
Well, what it's about is, well, it depends on who you ask. So the government will tell you it's about getting shovels in the ground and getting houses built faster. I think that's all a bunch of hooey. And then, like I say, I was at the home builders last night, and I think the majority of them believe it's a bunch of hooey. They believe that if they increase strong mayor powers, then they can cut the red tape and development will happen much faster. Well, in an area like this, we don't really want that to happen. We want the accountability. We want the transparency when it comes to paving over our lands. But if that's actually the reason, then I question why the province just can't cut the red tape and make it happen anyway. So why are we sacrificing local democracy, to kind of push this agenda of building houses when at the provincial level, why don't we just cut the red tape associated with home building and say to Mr. Municipality, here you go. You no longer have these regulations in place. Go approve all these building permits. So what? I don't get it. And I had a counselor say to me last night, well, I don't have a problem with the strong mayor powers because it only allows them to do A, B, and C. And I said, okay, that's fine, Mr. Counselor. But what happens when those powers are then expanded? And now the mayor who has strong mayor powers can not only do A, B, C, but can now do D, E, and F. And then, in 6 months, now they can do, GHI, right? So I had to make sure I was doing my alphabet right there. So there, it's a slippery slope. And my goodness, 47 heads of council right now, but prior to this announcement yesterday, 47 heads of council were strong mayors. And that number would have been higher, but keep in mind, Mayor Shelley Ann Bentley from Haldimand County, she denied the powers in 2023. She said, no, thank you. I don't want these powers. So, there would have been 48. We would have had 49 had the councillors in Norfolk County allowed the mayor to accept strong mayor powers in 2023. So that number would have been higher, but we're at 47. And now we want to take that to 169. 47 to 169.
Wow.
All in one shot. And there's 444 municipalities across this province. So 169 out of 444, you can bet your bottom dollar that you would see very aggressive development in those 169 municipalities. But you're also going to see other things. Aurelia, you've got me on a roll now. So Aurelia, I believe that the mayor in Aurelia was given strong mayor powers last week to deal with the ice storm. And his council, as of yesterday, was already writing to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, Rob Flack, asking that they rescind those powers, because not only has he just dealt with the ice storm, but now he's fired, I believe, a CAO that the council had hired. They've fired that CAO before he's even started.
I see, the problem I have here is I'm seeing this, if you give a mayor that much power, wouldn't it be easier for me to bribe them to get what I want? Like, that's not the system we're basing everything on. That shouldn't be the way it works.
Right. And it also, like Aurelia yesterday in their communication, it was saying it's a slap to democracy. And I mean, that's what I've been saying for a longest time about all of these things is it's a slap in the face of democracy. And they actually used that verbiage. Council used that yesterday. And it's so true, because if how do we go out there and we say, hey, Dave, you'd make a good county councillor. Why don't you throw your hat in the ring? Well, why would you? There's going to be this sentiment that, well, at the end of the day, I can take forward my voice on behalf of my constituents, but it could just be overturned anyway.
Yeah, this is another rabbit hole we don't really need to go down right now.
It's a slippery slope. It's a terrible precedent to actually give mayors all of these powers. And part of me is very suspicious.
Is it optional, or do they have to do it now?
Well, this is what I don't know. So last time it was optional. So like I say, Mayor Bentley, she said, no, thank you, don't want these. Mayor of Norfolk said, yes, I do, but council voted it down. I don't know. I have to figure out now whether or not council is still going to have to adopt this or approve this, right? But it's just, I'm very suspicious that this is a means to an end. I asked the question in the Ontario legislature before Christmas about all these, all this jiggery pokery with respect to school boards. And one conservative member said to me after question period, he says, well, maybe we don't need school boards. Maybe we don't need school board trustees. And so I start to wonder if, okay, so we allow these things to transpire. We don't deal with them. We create the narrative that we're paying these people unnecessarily. And I wonder if this is what's going on with councils as well. So all of a sudden, we just have heads of council.
Right.
And they make decisions along with staff. And guess what, Mr. and Mrs. Councillor, you are now not needed.
Well, then areas disappear too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's easy just to lump it into something. oh, you're all part of Hamilton here, right?
Right.
Like
Centralized decision making.
yeah,
I believe centralized decision making is coming down the pipe everywhere.
me too.
You look at what is going on right around the world,
We've been seeing
and
it for 10 years in Haldimand Norfolk. We've been
and
watching everything get dismantled that was critical to that area. It's now part of Brant or it's part of Hamilton. Like they're just taking it away from what a rural life would be. And I think that's the other part. There's a difference between a city life and a rural life, and they're
yes.
forgetting that.
And look at, I mean, look at what's happening around the world. You can't help but think that centralized power and
Yeah.
control and centralized decision making is top of the agenda. So I believe it's trickling right down. I think there, I might sound like a crazy lady, but I believe that part of this is all about centralized decision making, creating that atmosphere, creating that narrative that, look, you know what, some of these people really aren't needed, and look at all the money it would save if we didn't have them. So we put the power in one person's hands.
It's amazing, like when you start down these roads that we go down and we look at what could happen, it scares the poop out of me, to be honest with you. And I think that's where, I mean, why are we not, why as Canadians aren't we recognizing this that's coming? Like to me, I mean, you and I guess we talk about these things more so than the average everyday person, but on the other hand of it, it's going to affect your lives of you and your kids, and your decisions are going to be out of your control.
Listen, the reason I think that so many people are not seeing this, Dave, is because we're constantly distracted. Much
Yeah,
of what happens is distraction. Oh, look over here, because over here we're really doing this.
yeah,
And people look at the polarization. Look, just go to
yes.
social media, and oh my goodness, you read all these things about both candidates in any race, and you're like, oh my goodness, how do I even know how to vote, because we're hearing this and we're hearing this, and it's so polarized. 99% of it isn't even true about either candidate, right? But people are so distracted by what is not the issue, and I keep telling people, stop focusing on those little things. Start reading, start doing your research on some of the larger things. Like, we're going back to some of the stuff that's going on, with Trump. And I can't help but think that all of this chatter is to distract us from the fact that Canada has been largely infiltrated. And I mean, we have been infiltrated by very sophisticated criminal organizations from all around the world. And I think that much of what's being talked about right now is a distraction from reality.
I think too, I agree with you. And one thing I'm going to add to this, because I think it's critical, everything is fear based now. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where we've lost our way,
Yep.
because fear creates hate, and then it creates, well, fear creates anger, then it creates hate. And that's where we're not looking at it objectively and sort of seeing as each individual what is best for our communities and who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And another way that you battle that is getting back to the community, being
Yeah.
part of it, knowing your neighbor. It's those little things that we've lost.
Well,
You know what
and
I
we're
mean?
being fearful of all the wrong things.
Right. But I mean, you can see how it's based on it and how
Mm-hmm.
it affects people in their decision making nowadays. I
Yeah.
mean, majority of people don't know who their neighbors are anymore. Let's look at it right there.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part that always, on to your point, was that always gets me is you and I don't always agree on everything, but we can have a conversation, and that's gone. We need to get back to having that basic conversation about rights and wrongs, and then we
Mm-hmm.
can address the bigger issues. But for
Yeah.
some reason, we've skipped that. And again, I'm going to use social media. Unfortunately, I use it a lot, but I mean, it's the tool that kind of made us forget to talk to people.
Social media and the media, I believe, in government has created this
Yeah,
polarization of people, and we saw during the pandemic, right? We were all of a sudden, inserting ourselves into other people's lives, and unnecessarily, right? Like, I remember on social media reading how somebody called the police on their neighbor because there was a car in the driveway. Well, do you know that neighbor is maybe 95 years old and somebody's come to check on them? Like, why did we give permission to people to do this? And it hasn't stopped.
no,
It
it
just
hasn't.
it's just exacerbated, and it's very, very sad. We, at some point, a leader has to say, look, you know what, there's a whole bunch of things in the political realm that shouldn't be in the political realm. And
Yeah.
we have got to stop that. We've got to get back to what government actually should be doing, and that's being there in a time of need for people, not distracting them from the real issues, but actually being there in a time of need. And we are in a time of need. I saw your podcast the other day with Sean Wilson, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
That's
families who are
disability.
really right, families who are struggling, and that's what government used to be there for those families, and we've turned our back on families like that. And all the while we're putting money and we're distracting with other issues instead of looking after people in our community. I don't know, we're I know I've kind of went all over the place,
No,
but
no, I think it's well, and I think they all hook into each other, right? And that's the whole
mhm,
point of this podcast, is to
yeah,
try and find those connections and make things, find solutions that we can offer people to say, hey, well, why aren't we doing this? Or we should maybe look at it this way. And I think that's a really good example, because yeah, that was a great podcast to do. But those are the types of things that we need to address as a community too. Like I
yeah,
agree, on a federal and provincial level, they got to step up. And
mhm,
our communities are trying to hold these um, institutions and charities up. We're trying to support them. We're doing everything we can, but we need that assistance. And I think theirs was, and the example of theirs was like they've only seen a 7% increase in the last 25 years or something ridiculous.
it's ridiculous. And
Yeah, and the
and
cost
I
of living.
mean, the one point, that I hammer on when I talk about this, because I was part of the Five to Survive campaign. I pushed the Five to Survive campaign at Queen's Park and said, like, look, this is not about workers receiving more monies. This is about them keeping afloat and
Yeah,
keeping afloat for the most vulnerable in our community. And I think Sean brought up the point during the podcast that, look, you know what? When someone with developmental disabilities turns, goes from a child
18.
to adulthood,
Yeah, there's
things
nothing.
don't change.
Yeah,
Nothing changes for that family.
I
It's
agree.
it's it's not like all of a sudden they don't have developmental disabilities now because they're an adult. They still require the care. They still require the respite, assistance, all of these things, and yet government makes them jump through hoops. Oh, let's prove that you still have a family member with developmental disabilities. It's absolutely insanity. But
Why are you making somebody that's caring for their own family pay such high tax bracket?
mhm,
Like, you know what I mean? Give them back their money, their income
that's
tax.
right.
Just let
Yeah.
them help. Let them take care of themselves.
Again, that's right. Government should get out of our way. Yeah, I say this with a lot of these, a lot of sectors that require help from the government. Don't run a program with a bunch of bureaucrats who are making 120,
Yeah,
$130,000. Actually give the money to the families because they know how to better spend that money than the bureaucrats
they'll
sitting
make the
downtown
choices.
Toronto.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Let
Yep.
them find the person that they want to help them.
Hmm.
Boy, now we're both worked up and we got to go to work.
I know.
Thanks. Thanks for doing
But
this.
I've got another call, but at least my allergies are feeling better.
Sure. Okay, we'll blame the allergies. I got you. Okay, I'll stick to that. Yes, it's allergies, folks.
It's allergies.
That's. I actually told her folks to wear shades. I was like, you look cool, right? All right, I'm gonna let
Imagine.
Bobbi go and do what she does best. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Say hi to everybody at Queen's Park for all of us in Haldimand Norfolk, if you know what I mean.
Well, give them a big thumbs up.
All right, take
Yeah.
care.
Thanks, Dave.